All right, get ready, everyone, because today we're really going to dig deep into neurodevelopmental disorders.
Yeah, we're tackling a fascinating area today.
We got a request to do a deep dive on autism spectrum disorder,
It's ASD
ASD, right?
and Norman Roberts syndrome, or NRS.
And this is interesting because NRS, I don't think we've ever really gotten into that.
We haven't.
Yeah.
And it's particularly interesting because whoever wrote in specifically requested this deep dive. It sounds like they might already be familiar with ASD.
Yeah.
So we get to kind of take their existing knowledge and use this as the jumping off point to explore NRS and really highlight those connections and distinctions between the two.
Yeah, what are the overlaps? What are the differences? And
Yeah.
where better to do that than with this article from Cheap ABA?
I mean, the name always gets me.
Cheap ABA, it's like, come on.
Yeah, come on.
But they have good stuff.
Really solid articles.
So let's map out these two conditions first.
Right.
If we're going to think about them as like two neighborhoods in a vast city of neurological diversity, what are some of the landmarks? What are we going to see in each of these?
I love that. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So in the ASD neighborhood, we've got some well-known landmarks, right?
Yeah.
We're going to see challenges with social communication.
Right.
We might see some repetitive behaviors, sensory sensitivities. But the thing to remember with ASD is that it's a spectrum.
Right. It's huge.
It's not one size fits all.
It's not a single thing.
Right. So you might have one person who has difficulty with eye contact and the social cues.
Right.
And then another person who thrives in a structured environment, but really struggles with unexpected changes.
Right. Totally.
So lots of variation within that neighborhood.
Lots of variation.
Now, if we were to hop on, the Neuro Expressway and head across town to the NRS neighborhood,
Okay.
this one's a little smaller, less explored,
Yeah.
but equally important.
Okay.
And the article really emphasizes that NRS is directly linked to a specific gene called CUL4B.
And what does that gene do?
So this gene is involved in brain development.
Okay.
And when there's a mutation in CUL4B,
Yeah.
it can kind of throw a wrench in the whole process, right?
Okay.
Imagine a construction crew working with faulty blueprints.
Oh, okay.
The
Yeah.
building might have structural issues. There might be delays in completion.
Got it.
Things just might not go according to plan.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you can kind of start to see that connection to NRS, right?
Okay. So we're talking about neurological impairments, things that could impact movement, learning. I think they said something about facial features too.
Absolutely. All of that.
Wow.
It's like trying to learn a new dance move, but your coordination is off, or you're struggling to recall information because your brain processes it a little differently.
It's so interesting because we throw around the term developmental delays a lot, but this really paints a picture of what that can actually look like.
And it really makes you appreciate how much we take for granted.
Absolutely.
Like those everyday things that we don't even think about
Right.
can be major hurdles for someone with NRS.
It's true. And while NRS has its own, like you said, specific genetic cause, I mean, we are seeing some overlapping features with that ASD neighborhood.
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
What are some of the ones that jump out in the article?
Well, those developmental delays that we were just talking about, those are a big one.
Okay.
Both ASD and NRS can lead to challenges in communication, in social interaction, in learning. It's like both neighborhoods have parks, right?
Okay.
But those parks might be designed for kids with different needs.
But they serve a similar purpose.
Exactly.
And even though the parks are different, the kids in those parks, they're still finding ways to play.
Right.
They're finding ways to connect.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a good reminder that even when we are talking about very distinct conditions, there's still common ground.
Absolutely.
There's still overlap.
You might see a child with NRS getting upset over a change in their routine or finding comfort in repetitive movements, just as you might with some individuals on the autism spectrum.
So those behaviors that we might typically associate with ASD, they're not exclusive to ASD.
Right, exactly.
So it would take a professional really looking closely to figure out what's going on.
Right, like trying to figure out which neighborhood we're in before we can recommend the best local bakery. Right.
I love that, yeah. So Cheap ABA is giving us this great overview, but I already want to know more.
Yeah.
What are some of the key differences we should be thinking about?
Well, for starters, that genetic root, that's a major distinction.
Okay.
ASD has this much more complex interplay
Yeah.
of genetic and environmental factors.
Okay, so multiple ingredients in that recipe.
Exactly.
So you might inherit a predisposition for certain traits, but then the environment influences how those manifest.
It's like the ingredients are there, but how you combine them, how long you cook it for, it all makes a difference.
Okay.
Whereas NRS, it's more like that COL4B gene is the key ingredient. And if it's missing or altered, it has a significant impact on the final outcome. It's a little more straightforward in that sense, but no less complex when it comes to the individual experience.
And that impact often includes physical characteristics that aren't typically associated with ASD.
Right, exactly.
So individuals with NRS might have specific facial features like widely spaced eyes, a prominent forehead, things that can actually be clues for diagnosis.
Exactly. Those physical characteristics can be really important for early identification.
It's amazing to me that a single gene can have such wide-ranging effects.
It is remarkable, and it speaks to the interconnectedness of our biology.
So even though there is that single gene, there's still a lot of variation within NRS.
Oh, absolutely. Just like with ASD, every individual is unique, and the severity of neurological impairments can vary widely.
Okay, so when the article talks about the potential for more severe cognitive impairments in NRS, that's not a guarantee for every individual.
Exactly. It's important not to make generalizations.
Right, because everyone's experience is going to be different.
And that actually leads us to a really important question. What happens when someone is navigating life within both of these neighborhoods?
Both, you're talking about the possibility of someone having both ASD and NRS.
Precisely.
That's fascinating and a little daunting.
It is. And unfortunately, the research on co-occurrence is still quite limited.
Because it's so rare.
Exactly.
So we really are venturing into uncharted territory here.
We are, but that's part of what makes this deep dive so interesting.
It's true. So tell me more about that.
It's like, imagine we're trying to understand someone's life story.
Okay.
And we've got these two storylines, right? They're both happening at the same time, and they're both influencing each other.
Okay, I like that analogy. So each storyline has its own like plot points, its own characters.
Exactly.
But they're kind of woven together.
They're intertwined.
Yeah.
And we can't just focus on one and ignore the other, right?
Right, because then you're missing half the story.
Exactly. We need to understand how they intersect, how they shape the overall narrative.
And that's where it gets really complex, I imagine, when we're talking about supporting someone with both of these conditions.
Absolutely, because now we're dealing with the unique challenges of both ASD and NRS in a single individual.
Right, so it's not just about understanding ASD, it's not just about understanding NRS, it's about understanding how those two things interact.
It's like trying to navigate a city using two maps at once, each with its own landmarks and routes.
You'd need a really, really good navigator for that.
You would. You'd need a whole team, right?
Right.
And that's where those support networks, those teams of professionals come in.
Okay, so doctors, therapists,
Therapists, yeah.
all working together.
To create a roadmap that considers both diagnoses, both storylines.
It's like having a team of experts who can speak both languages, right?
Exactly.
They can kind of bridge that gap, translate the complexities for the individual, for the family.
Absolutely. And that's where early intervention becomes even more crucial.
Okay, we touched on that earlier, but how does that play out when we're talking about two conditions potentially being present?
So early intervention is always important,
Right.
but it becomes even more critical when we're talking about these kinds of situations.
Because?
Think of it this way. If there's a chasm,
Okay.
early intervention is like building a bridge
Okay.
to help someone cross that chasm safely.
Gotcha.
If there's just one chasm, one bridge might be enough.
But with two,
You need a bridge that's specifically designed to span both.
right, to provide a safe path forward.
Exactly. And that's what early intervention can offer in these more complex situations.
So it's about recognizing those unique challenges, but also like really capitalizing on that individual's strengths.
Yes, absolutely.
Because everybody has strengths.
Everyone has those inner resources, those talents
Right.
that we can help them tap into.
And that's where those support networks are so vital.
Families,
Yeah.
therapists,
Yeah.
educators, all working together to create that environment where the individual feels supported, understood, empowered.
It's about creating that safety net, but then also giving them the tools to climb.
Exactly.
So going back to cheap ABA for a second,
Yeah,
they talk a lot about making autism therapy accessible.
they do.
What are some of the approaches that they might use?
Well, as their name suggests, applied behavior analysis, or ABA, is a big one.
Right.
It's all about understanding how behavior works
Okay.
and then using that knowledge to teach new skills to address challenging behaviors.
So it's not about fixing someone, it's about giving them the tools
Exactly.
to navigate the world more effectively.
It's like imagine a child with ASD who loves to build towers.
Okay, I love building towers.
Right. But they struggle with sharing.
Right.
So ABA might involve breaking down that concept of sharing into smaller, more manageable steps,
Okay.
starting with something simple, like taking turns rolling a car back and forth,
Okay.
and then gradually increasing the complexity as the child masters each step,
Got it. So starting small and building up.
and using positive reinforcement along the way, like verbal praise or a small reward, to motivate the child and build those positive associations.
So it's like creating that positive learning environment where they feel safe to explore, to make mistakes, to
Absolutely.
celebrate those victories.
It's crucial to create that safe space.
But ABA is not the only game in town, right?
Oh, absolutely not. There are other therapies that can be incredibly beneficial.
Right.
Speech therapy to help with communication,
Right.
occupational therapy for motor skills and sensory processing,
Right.
social skills groups to practice interacting with peers.
It's about finding that right combination,
It's about building a toolbox.
a toolbox of support strategies.
Exactly.
And that toolbox probably needs to be even bigger, even more, I don't know, diverse, I guess, when we're talking about co-occurring conditions like this.
Absolutely. It's like having a master key that can unlock different doors.
I like that.
And each door leads to greater independence, greater well-being.
And that key is made through collaboration.
Communication, understanding.
Understand?
Yeah, a real team effort to provide that compassionate, effective support.
And while we are focusing on ASD and NRS today,
Right.
these principles, I mean, they really apply across the board.
Absolutely. This isn't just about these two conditions.
This is about broadening our understanding of neurodiversity as a whole.
Exactly.
It's about challenging those assumptions.
Embracing differences.
Creating a world where everyone really feels seen and heard.
And valued for who they are.
Yeah, so how do we do that? Where do we even begin?
I think it starts with those small steps,
Okay.
those everyday actions.
What do you mean?
Like, imagine you're at the grocery store
Okay.
and you see a child having a meltdown.
Yeah.
Our instinct might be to judge,
Oh, absolutely.
to get annoyed, right?
It's easy to get frustrated.
But what if instead of that, we offer a kind word to the parent?
Okay.
Or even just a knowing nod, like, I see you, I get it, you're doing your best.
That little bit of empathy can go a long way.
Absolutely.
Just acknowledging that they're going through something.
And it's not just about individual interactions either.
Right.
We can advocate for more inclusive classrooms,
Yeah.
workplaces that value neurodiversity,
Absolutely.
policies that ensure everyone has access to the support they need.
It's about recognizing that the world wasn't really designed for everyone, and it's on us to change that.
Right, and one of the biggest misconceptions we need to dismantle is this idea that a diagnosis defines a person's potential.
Oh, completely.
Like, the article from Cheap ABA doesn't explicitly say this,
Yeah.
but it's so important.
You're right. It's a really important point.
Because if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism.
100%.
Each person, whether they have ASD, NRS, or any other neurological difference, they have their own unique strengths, their own talents, their own passions.
I love that you said passions.
Yeah.
Because it really emphasizes that these are whole people with rich inner lives. You know, it's not just a diagnosis on a page.
It's about creating spaces where those passions can flourish.
Yeah.
Imagine the incredible contribution someone might make if we support their love for music or art or technology instead of just focusing on the challenges.
It's about shifting our focus from what people can't do to what they can do
Exactly.
and helping them really unlock that potential.
And that potential, it goes beyond just what we traditionally think of as success.
Right. It's not just about, like, getting a job and, you know.
It's about finding joy, connection, purpose.
Right. Those things that we all want.
Those universal human experiences that transcend any diagnosis.
It's about seeing the humanity in everyone we meet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what this whole deep dive boils down to, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing the humanity, the individuality, the incredible diversity within the world of neurodevelopmental differences.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
I feel like I've learned so much, even just in this short conversation.
Me too. And I hope that our listeners feel empowered to continue that journey.
Yeah. Keep learning.
Keep understanding.
Keep advocating.
Because every voice, every story, every act of kindness, it all matters.
It really does.
So the next time you encounter someone who seems different, remember that beneath the surface, there's this whole world waiting to be understood.
Yeah.
Approach them with curiosity, with compassion, with an open mind.
Yeah. You might be surprised by what you discover.
You really might.
That's beautifully said. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive.
Let's do it.
Until next time, everyone, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep embracing the beautiful complexity of the human experience.